This session is going to be quite interactive, less talking. So this is supposed to be a let's work together, work through something. So you should probably be at your computer and be logged into your LibreText account. I'm going to give a little bit of background, a little bit of walking through some things, but then we're going to get started actually starting to build a book in this session. So great. If we go through this, I'm going to go and understanding the structure of LibreText libraries. You should already have this from earlier today's talk. And then taking a look at how do we navigate that LibreText Commons. I'll do it together with you and show you some search tools and a little bit about licensing just to get you an idea. And then the actual doing anything is always going to be in the LibreText conductor. So whenever you ask me how do I do something, I always say it's going to be in the conductor. And then further support throughout this week. Just to let you know, it is, this is the first of our publishing series. It's not quite as Adapt 1, Adapt 2, Adapt 3, where you have to go one in order, but it is intended to be that way. However, you could technically jump straight into remixing if you're relatively familiar with our books. That's why we didn't make it quite as rigorous. But this one is going to be very basic, how to find books, how to think about books, and how to think about publishing, how to think about authoring. Great. Yeah. Audio should be working. Great. All right, so we're going to start off with these 5 steps of authoring a textbook. First, you should always ask, what do we already have on LibreTexts? If there's some stuff out there that's just as good as what you would write, save yourself a lot of time by just reusing things that are already there. That's the point of OER, is you can revise it, reuse it, remix it, use it in different ways. It'll save you a lot of time. Perfection is the enemy of getting something done. Second, we're going to talk about what else is out there beyond LibreTexts and what that means for authoring in the OER world. And then we're going to talk about getting started. What are the formats that we talk about? The harvesting, what is remixing? And then when I said earlier, doing things, it's going to be all in the conductor, including publishing. So we're going to start off with what do we already have? So we did mention we have these 16 libraries, and they're broken down into campus bookshelves, and learning objects. And I like to just kind of break it down into, if you're looking to author a regular book, or something that's useful by everybody, then that's either going to be a general use textbook, or it's going to be something that's an interactive or ancillary material, a lab manual, maybe a collection of case studies, something along those lines will be in the learning objects. Okay. And then general use textbooks are books that are what you'd get from a publisher, something that anyone could use in any class. It's just chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. However, a lot of people start off LibreText with just making a custom book by using some sort of a mix of things. These would be in the campus bookshelf because they're special for your class. In this case, you might not have chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. You might organize things by unit 1 because that's everything that's on test 1. And unit 2 because that's everything that's on test 2. There's different ways to organize things that match your syllabus a little bit better. For instance, here, this is what a campus bookshelf looks like for Fullerton College. It has their own books here, and this is both by Akeda here. So those specific books are in the Geosciences Library in the campus bookshelf for Fullerton College. Here's the books that are published by that professor for their 2 classes. All right, so let's look to see how you can search for things. Because, actually, I want to jump down for a second to this because I forgot. Copy the URL link. All right, so I'm going to drop this link in the chat. The way that we encourage anyone to start writing a book for your course is to start off with a textbook map or a course map, depending on how you want to call it. I gave an example one here that you can copy. It's a Google Doc. You can make a copy of it and change it however you'd like. But what it does is it just says, I'm going to have my units, because this is how I usually think of my class. I have units, which are usually associated with the test, modules, which are usually associated with certain topics in that unit, and then learning objectives or lecture topics. So then this would be like, the material covered on Monday, September 15th. Then I try to make a link to some OER resource, whether it's on LibreText or it's somewhere else, and then any notes that I want to make for either of those things. So this is a great way if you want to make a remix of a book that's specific for your course, but also I think it's really helpful. You might have to sign into just any Google account. So you'll have to have some sort of a Google account to do that. If not, then if you don't have any Google Docs account, then you might need to have something else. I can always send you an Excel sheet of it later too. Plus, the whole entire Excel spreadsheet is just these things: unit, module, lecture, object, OER, and this. There's nothing else to it. I apologize. I've been talking a lot today, so I'll be taking some more sips. These things don't need to be OER. Also, they don't necessarily even need to be OER in general. You could be having links to your own materials here. That's perfectly fine. But it's good to have some map of what you're going to build and what things maybe the notes are. I'm going to have to write this myself. I'm going to have to write this myself. So let's go back and take a look at finding material that may be good enough for your class. As per usual, if you're at any of our websites, there's a rocket ship in the corner. I go to the rocket ship and I'm going to scroll down to our commons. So this is where you can search for books. So there are good ways to search for books here. And I mentioned this before, but let's see in the chat. Can someone tell me the name of a course that you're teaching that you're going to be looking to build a course today? Calculus 1, business information. Ooh, lots of good ones. I'm going to take the first one that was there, physical geology. And I'm just going to search for books in physical geology. So here's a bunch of books for physical geology that already exist. And they start to get, some of them have this Geol 001 in front or Ocean 101. If they start off with Ocean 101 or Geology 101, they're probably course specific, right? For one specific type of class. So you might want to look for books that are just generic books for anybody. And that you would do by looking at the location and not the campus bookshelf, but the central bookshelves. So this gets rid of a lot of those ones that have numbers in front of them, because those ones are usually in a campus's bookshelf, whereas these ones are elsewhere. Some of these don't make any sense, right? Physical geology, probably not advanced theoretical physics, assuming, or this is chemistry. So you could say, I already know that I want this to be in the, where's the geosciences library. So this would be giving you books that are in the geosciences library. Still have quite a few. So we are in the geosciences library. We're currently looking at just the central libraries. And I think sometimes it's nice to look for books that might have some assets. So these ones have some assets. So let's go take a look at what they have. This one here has, where does it have it? I thought this one had assets. Oh, public assets. I am not seeing the list of assets here, but let me go take a look. You probably can't see the conductor project. I'm just curious as to why this is showing up with having assets. I'm going to go back and try one of the other ones. I'm going to look for instructor assets. A lot of these are showing up with it. I think our search might be a little bit weird. So you should be able to search for things that have like PowerPoint slides and assets like that. So that would be the first mechanism for finding things. Go and look at the catalog, see what we've got and all the different metadata, fill out, file down those. That's good for finding a book that might be good for your class. And I say that meaning a book. So if you're looking at calculus, which I saw there's calculus 1 up there, if you're looking for a calculus 1 book, that's a good way to find a book for calculus. Now, if you know that there's not a good book that's exactly what you want, or maybe you're teaching a hybrid class that covers a lot of different disciplines, then you might want to go a little bit more detailed about the topics that you're looking at. So let's say I am okay, I'm going to go with Julie's suggestion for nursing and pharmacology. So I'm going to go back to here, and now I'm going to go straight into the health library because I know everything I want to talk about is going to be in the health library. And I'm going to look for pharmacology. In the pharmacology area, this is in the health library only now. There are some things that are just bookses, and books. So this is one that says Med Library Text Courses, Monterey Peninsula College. So this is a book that is actually specialized for this textbook at Monterey Peninsula College. This one is a pharmacology book that's just in the general bookshelves. Again, I think it's useful to switch to your location to just look at your bookshelves, because your bookshelves, there's 500 books in the bookshelves, but there's another 200 or so, or up to 200, that are probably just remixes of those books. So it's a lot of duplication. So I'm going to click on bookshelves. And now I'm not getting any that are any specific college. I'm only getting ones that are here. So this Nursing Pharmacology Open RN, that's the exact same book title that was for Monterey College, but now this is the one that is the general use one. So that gives you an idea of that. So that's a good way to look through a book as a library as well, and to see who has made other versions of books. And you can also keep diving into the location and say, you know what, I don't want the pharmacology books. I want my book to be in nursing. So I'm gonna go to the nursing sub area. And now I can see this is the nursing one. This is a pharmacology basics introduction. It starts with 1.1. So that's a specific page of a book. And then there's an OpenStax book here, pharmacology for nurses. So you can dive into sub-disciplines to get into there. I didn't talk about that much earlier today, so I'm going to do that here for you. In the bookshelves are divided up even further. So I'm in the health library, but now I want to maybe go into the nursing sub library. And then in the nursing field, here are the books that are specific to nursing. So there's a lot of other things that are subdivided here as well. This searching within the library lets you search for specific pages. So for instance, since we happen to be in the health library, Julie, do you want to drop something in the chat where there's a specific topic that you really are interested in finding a good explanation of that topic in pharmacology? Maybe something that your students are always confused by, or you think most books don't handle very well. Beta blockers. So I'm going to go ahead and search this library one more time for beta blockers. And once again, I'm going to switch this to just the bookshelves. Oh, although we've got some learning objects here too. So this is some maybe case studies or more interactive things. Here's a lab that involves beta blockers. Here's a cortical atrophy. I don't even know what that means. A couple other lab exercises. So in the lab exercises, and so there's one visualization and four different laboratories that are there. So there's some cool things you can see there. Let's go back and clear my filters. And this time I'm going to go look at the bookshelves, so the general use books. So these are the pages that are out there that talk specifically about this topic. This is in chapter 18.4, but who cares what the numbers are? That just lets you know that it's not the name of a book. It's a specific page in a chapter. So you can go through here and click on a few of them. I'm just going to open a few of them. And then I can go through and review this book page to see if it's the way that I'd like it to be taught. And if I find one that I really like, I can copy that link and put it into my textbook map. So then I have like, okay, this one actually covers my textbook map pretty well. Let me make a copy of this, my own copy. So then in here, I would go through and I would put this in my link to OER and maybe make a little note of what that one looks like. Make a link, this one here's that. And then I would say nice visuals or something along those lines. Let me make this bigger for you. So this lets you go through and maybe find specific pages that address certain things. That sounds pretty good. Now, Josh is getting ahead of me, but I'm going to show you the third way to find some really, really good information. So if I'm looking for beta blockers for nursing pharmacology, here's a trick that I like, which is using Google. So if I use Google, which is a really good content search, that's what it does, is content search. I could do nursing pharmacology, and I could do beta blockers. I'm going to put those in quotes. If you don't know what quotes do for a search engine, it means I don't want to search for the word beta and the word blockers. I want to search for the phrase beta blockers. So that it has to have the words beta next to the word blockers and all kinds. So then I want to find things that are just on site:libretext.org. So that's exactly what Josh just put in the chat. If you preface this site:libretext.org, then Google will only return results that are on LibreText. So this has the added benefit of actually searching all of our libraries at the same time. So this one actually got some of our studio, which is our H5P as well. So you can see an H5P thing. I don't have any idea that we're going to find anything that's not in the health library. But as an example, I'm going to type in biology and catalysis. So catalysis is a very common topic in biology, but you'll see that there's actually a lot in enzymes in chemistry library as well. So it might be that when you're finding resources, you just want to look across all the libraries at once and you want to see the pages that are interesting for that. So maybe you're a biologist, but you happen to really like the way this chemistry book talks about enzyme catalysis. Maybe you want to bring that in. You can bring things from one library to another library. We're not restrictive in that way. So what you can do is go through, fill out your textbook maps, and get some idea. I always say start with the pages that you think are always taught poorly. Because if something is easy to find, the way to teach it well, then most of the books are probably going to have a pretty similar way to approach that. If you've hit on the ones that you think are kind of difficult to teach, that'll maybe give you an idea of which author out there you really like. So maybe you've just defaulted to the same, standard OER book all the time, but this gives you a chance to say, I really want to go look at other people who write that way. Okay, does that sound pretty good? Thumbs up if you do. Awesome. Okay. So once we get through that, and we're going to go ahead and give you some time here to do that, I'm going to talk a little bit more about some other formats you have, but I'm going to good. So those are the three different methods: search the commons, search the library itself, or use the internet to just search using that command line site:libretext.org. And then fill out that textbook map. What else is out there outside of LibreText? So I taught you 3 different ways to search LibreText, but there's a lot of OER resources out there. So because of that, we can actually find a lot of different things. So if you were to just search for this, but not the site libretext.org, but maybe just OER or something, you might find other books out there. I don't even know where you find these things, but I know a lot of states and schools have a library of OER materials. And those are all great. And you can actually use those in LibreText because we're not a publisher and we're also not just a repository. We are a library that collects things to be used together. So we will bring things from other places into our library, and we call that harvesting. So I'm going to go back to this. You'll notice that in our library, you see a lot of books. Sometimes those books have multiple licenses, and that's because it can be a remix from other books into one book. So you can take a book from here and a book from here and put them all in there, and they can have different licenses. But it's important to know what those licenses are. So as long as it's an OER license, then we can bring it into our book. And that could be other books within our library or other open content that's out there on the internet or other integrated harvested books. And some examples of this are actually nicely in our chemistry library. This is the Chemistry 1E and 2E OpenStax books. So those are books that were published with a Creative Commons license by OpenStax. And now that content lives on LibreText as well, because there's free license to reproduce things and make different copies of it. That's perfectly fine. And I don't mean that in a legal standpoint. I mean that in a very collegial way. We know the OpenStax people, they know us. We have different goals for how we publish things. Good, we're gonna get there in a second, Brooke. Then we have books down here that have someone's name. So for instance, this is a book that I worked on in graduate school, Moore et al. This is a book that was written by me and my team. So it has a name of the book and it has the author's name in parentheses. So that has content that I wrote for my book. Okay, so that's like what you might do if you're going to publish something completely from you. But you can also make a map. So if you see a map out there, so this is actually a book called A Molecular Approach, which is by a professor named Tro. It's a very common book in general chemistry. And a lot of people like that structure of that book. But it costs a lot of money. So what we did was we made a textbook map of that book, which means none of the words in this book are from Tro's book. But we took other pages in OER world and put them into the same order as Tro's book, because you can't copyright a table of contents. So it has the same table of contents as Tro, but it's OER pages and not Tro's pages, if that makes sense. This, for those of you who are out there in instructional design or OER coordinators, this is a really great way to move a faculty member who doesn't want to rewrite all of their curriculum because their chapter numbers changed. You can actually make a remix of OER material that has the same chapter numbers and section numbers as their existing book did before. And in fact, that'll stay the same longer than the traditional publisher, because traditional publishers love to change numbers here and there just a little bit between chapter to chapter, between version to version. So this is a copy of the table of contents of Tro, and then it has all OER content in it. Another way you can make a remix for your book that might be useful, especially if you're not going to author all your own materials, is if you wanted to divide things up just by curriculum for your course. So for instance, this is a professor who did not write a single thing for her textbook. Instead, she just wanted to take pages that existed in LibreText that taught things the way she liked it, and then have her book focused on reducing the cognitive load for her students so they knew exactly what was on exam 1. What's on exam 1? Everything in unit 1 in our book. You don't have to say it's from chapter 5.2 to section 6.4. It is everything in unit 1 is on exam 1. Everything in unit 2 is on exam 2. Everything on unit 3 is in exam 3. So this way she could design a book that matched her syllabus exactly. This is another way you could have a map of a book. So Anne asks, where should I start? I have OER ESL texts that I have finished writing. They are in Microsoft Word. Perfect. This is exactly the next type of area we're going to go into. Great. That is exactly where we're going to go next. So this is me talking about textbook maps and then making your own versions of books. So then here we are starting for authoring. So we have 5 different mechanisms that I will get to you in about a slide or two. We have 5 mechanisms that we like to encourage people to think about authoring books. And I think most people default to number 3, which is faculty construction of raw content from scratch. But there's also a lot of other ways we've done it in LibreText. So you can also have students contribute things that they write from scratch, maybe by extra credit assignments. That's an open pedagogy type of model. Student integration of existing content outside LibreText from other faculty and experts. So they can go out and find things and bring it in as maybe an assignment to pull things together. This is great for keeping your course relevant. So if you teach a class that has a lot of pop culture or a lot of politics in it, you might need to update your book every 3 weeks. And that might be a lot easier if you make that an assignment that you have students help you to modify things. But number 4 is faculty doing that same thing and bringing it in for other places, but that's really hard and a lot of work as well. It's much more integrated and exciting for students to work on that material to see how relevant your classroom has outside of it. And then mechanism 5 is faculty and students re-editing together. So making this a real open pedagogy approach of I'm going to work with my students to modify and build things together. So that collaborative authoring there works. Sarah, that's a good question. And I'm going to maybe we'll hold off towards the end of this session before we get to that one. In fact, if you want to put that into the Q&A box, that might help me to save it. So to go over Anne's question, Anne's question about where do you start if you have a lot of materials already? So we have the ability to start writing and building a book. And that begins with either having the correct format for us to put it into our library, or harvesting it from someplace that already exists, and you're just going to move it to LibreText, or remixing content that you found by looking around. So we have a very robust harvesting and integrating engine. This is Preeti. She works with that group. If you have materials in Microsoft Word documents like Anne does, you just submit a harvesting request, and then we will do that for you. If you have that interactive materials, if they're not in the Word documents, if you have a way to give those to us as well, if they're in H5P, or if there are questions that we can port into Adapt, or if they just have some basic interactivity, those things can all be hosted by us as well. We like to leave no technology behind. So even if it's materials that you've hosted on your own site and you want us to host us in some way that we can integrate it, we'll work really hard to do that as well. So we take all sorts of formats. We can do it from scratch, from a website, from PDF, from EPUBs or Campus cartridges, Google Docs, Microsoft Word, LaTeX we even do, Pressbooks, or Lumen Learning. All of these formats are things that we've done in the past to bring them into LibreText. In order to get started, I'm going to go ahead and jump over here. If you click on this question mark and contact support, so I'm going to do that one more time in case you missed it. Click on the question mark in the corner, contact support. The second queue that you can put in is a harvesting request. So you can give us a material or put them all in a shared database somewhere, and then you can go ahead and submit a harvesting request for your materials. That's the fastest way to get things done. All right, we're about ready to get into the everyone doing everything. Otherwise, everything is going to be done in a remixed fashion. I'm going to get you guys started. I'm not going to walk through this anymore. I'm going to have you follow along with me. All right, so everybody in your computers, if you can click on the rocket ship or go to the launch pad, I will put it into the chat. If you go to the launch pad, you should see this. Everyone good so far? I got one thumbs up. All right, so remember what I said earlier. If you're going to actively do anything, then you don't go to a library. You don't go to where you find books. You go to the conductor. The conductor is where you do. When you do things, you're in the conductor. And no matter what you're going to do, that doing will always be a project. So the first thing that you're going to do is create a conductor project. This will be the same whether you're creating a group of ancillary materials, a group of lab PDFs or something like that, or if you're making a book, or if you're planning LibreFest. We've also used this project management to just plan conferences. So if you click on it, create a conductor project, it'll ask you for the title and the visibility. You can feel free to write whatever you want here. Okay. This can just be a practice one for you. It will not be public. No one will be able to see it but you. Well, and the LibreText people, but we're not going to judge you. Thumbs up if you've got your create project going. Awesome. All right, you should have a project and have a green bar that check mark project successfully created. All righty. Looks great. So there's a lot of things you can do here. The main one is editing properties. If you are going to build a repository of materials, so this means not a book, but the things that would go with a book. So worksheets, PowerPoint slides, things like that, just some collection. We call those, we call those mini repositories or mini repos. So that's one of the newer things you might not be familiar with. But if, for instance, you teach chemistry and you have a collection of spectroscopy PowerPoints, spectroscopy is taught in different classes depending on the year, depending on the professor, depending on the class. So that might just be something you just put all of them together into one place. Then you might do that. Otherwise, typically I stick to either the harvesting as the default or just construction. So, and then you can also put in other principal investigators, project, that's not really a big deal. The thumbnail for your book, if you're going to want to do it later. This is where you would link a homework set. So if you built an adapt set that you wanted linked to your textbook, you would put your adapt course here so that it would get tied together. So there's a lot of different things that you can do there, but mostly that changes the name, the thumbnail, edits, and things like that. The second one that you do most often is managing your team. So when you have a team, you can have people who are team members, team leads. Those are both people who can manage who are the author, the editors of the book. And then auditors are people who can't edit the book, but they can look at it before it's published. And you can invite anybody you want to. That's how you manage control of your book. So a lot of things are managed here. The first thing that we're going to do, though, is create a book because we're all here to write a book. So click on create a book. And this is the biggest thing to know is that you have to know which library to put your book. For my nursing faculty, that's easy. It's the health one. For chemistry, pretty easy, chemistry library. For people who are in the middle between different fields, what I would do is go to my textbook map and see which library most of these are from. So if this is the business library, that's the humanities library, that's the medicine or health library. Which library are most of my materials coming from? That's probably where your book should reside. It should be pretty easy to figure that out, but for a lot of conflicting ones here. Where's the create book button? If you made your project, it should be the green button right here under important actions. Create book. It's green with white. If you're looking at us and thinking, that's not very accessible, white text on light green colors, we know we're in the process of changing all of our green buttons to dark blue. Perfect. So now you can choose whichever one you want. Chemistry is my favorite. And then you can put your book title. It defaults to being your title of your project, but you can change the book if you want. You can change the name of your book later. You can't change which library you're in. So once you're in a library, you're in that library. There are big, big things that my team can do to try to move it, but it's a very big pain in the neck. So I would say stick with that. You click on create your book. All right, now you'll get a whole bunch of blue bars. I have a whole bunch of them. You probably only have all the ones that don't say admin only. You probably have an open project link, a OER remixer, a restacker. I think that's all you should see, just 3 things. All right, I think everything's pretty good. If you don't have access to a library, let me see who else is here with me. No one else is here with me. Wait, no. Jennifer and Amy are here. Jennifer, do you mind checking out to see why they don't have access to a library? Do you have a verified account? You'll know if you have a verified account. But if you click on that rocket ship and you look at the upper corner, it should say verified instructor there. If you're not a verified instructor, then you are not an account, a verified instructor, and you can't access the library. It does. All right, go ahead and put your email in the chat for Jennifer, and she will take a look at it. If you have a very old account, I don't know how long you've had one. At some point, we didn't give you access to all libraries at the same time. All right, Jennifer is going to take care of those. If you do go straight to the help library, you should be able to click sign in. And when you sign in, this gray bar should turn black if you have access to that library. Okay. Don't worry. We got your message. Okay, so I'm going to take a break for about 10 minutes and throw you guys into breakout rooms just to work, and you can feel free to keep messaging each other. I think people are just coming back. And I will start off by answering the last question that, yes, you can harvest Canvas ones as long as you export them in some way that we can open those files. I wanted to just go over a couple things before we have to move to the next session in just a few minutes. And it will be very quick because I don't want to be late for the next session. Well, I guess I can't be too late because I'm the one running the next session too. Okay, so there are two things to think about when you're editing books as an author. Okay, we mentioned harvesting. That's a whole nother thing. And definitely stop by the support center or stop by any of the other support areas to ask questions more about harvesting and those specific requests. But for people who are going to be using some OER materials that are already existing in LibreText, or they're going to be using their own materials, and you're going to write your own materials, then you'll want to make sure to separate in your brain two different things. In LibreText, you build a skeleton of a book in the remixer, and then you edit content on the library, okay? The recording for this will be available basically as soon as I'm done talking. It's very quick. So if you wanted to add a new page to a book, then you do that so you can add blank empty pages to books in that remixer. So you can build a whole entire book of empty pages in the remixer. And then once you do that, you can go into your book and then you will just fill out and type in everything that you want for those pages. So that's how you will build a book from scratch, is you just build a table of contents and then you fill out the text. You can always go back to the remixer and add another page, or you can go back to the remixer and move pages around. That's perfectly reasonable. It's also how you bring content in. So the next session right after this, we'll talk about the remixer and how you can bring things in. The biggest confusion for people is, I want to make this book my own book. I would like to take a copy of this book and make it mine. That is not how it works in the world of LibreText. So what you do is, I'm going to create an empty book, and I'm going to take everything from this book and put it inside of it. So we don't copy books. We make our own book, which happens to have all the stuff from someone else. So you don't take OpenStack's book and then make your own copy of it. What you do is you take your own book that is empty, and then you take all of OpenStack stuff and dump it into it. Does that make sense? It's a little bit counterintuitive because you're used to making copies of things, because that's how other platforms work. But it's really important to LibreText that we know who owns that remix, who can change the order of that. And that's you, that's yours. So then you stick all of OpenStack's in there, and then you can modify it. That's your modified version, even if you don't happen to want to change very much at all. And then you'll go in for each of those pages, and you can modify those. And we'll talk about those right after this. Okay. For Tina, don't worry about deleting projects. Literally nobody can see them, so it doesn't matter. If you really want us to delete it, send us a support ticket, and then we'll delete it for you. If there's a platform, and then let me put this one up here. Is there a platform recommended for students and faculty to edit OER together? LibreText. You can give editing permissions to anyone, even if it's a student, for your book. That's perfectly fine. You might have to put in a support ticket for a student author, but we will grant it at your permission, but we don't do it generally, obviously, for obvious reasons, but we can do that. All right. Okay, I apologize for running through these, but we have a lot of fun things, and there are so many hours left in this week that are just open editing help sessions. So I want to make sure that you know that there's still plenty of opportunities to ask questions and continue to get help. We're just trying to make sure that we get through a lot of this onboarding, and that way we have as much time to help individual people as possible. All right. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you at the next one if you want to learn about remixing.